Hello everyone, welcome to the Books of Morgan. I'm Morgan and today I'm doing a drunk book review with a very special guest. So today I am here with a very special guest and her name is...
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah. I'm a good friend of Morgan's. We attended university together. Morgan's since graduated.
I'm older than her by 1 year. So we both read Midnight Sun and we are here to get tipsy and talk about all our feelings and thoughts because much like most of you guys, we have opinions.
We have so many opinions.
And strong opinions, and I don't think we have all the same opinions either.
No, I think this will be an interesting discussion.
I think it will be too. And I have everything tabbed, so I have my evidence ready to go. Unlike this one.
Just reading.
Yeah.
I just texted my mom all my thoughts and feelings. She did not appreciate it.
My mom is like, what's Twilight? So tonight we are drinking Carnivore Zinfandel. I'm not a huge Zinfandel person, but the Carnivore label just really spoke to me. Get that in there. There we go.
There.
So, Carnivore, never heard of it, but I thought it was funny because in Twilight, Edward's always like, my family is different, we're vegetarians.
We're vegetarian.
We're vegetarians. We only eat animals, not humans. So I'm like, alright, we're gonna eat some animals tonight, but there's no animal stuff in here, it's just named Carnivore. So, thought that was a fun little play on words, and that's why I got it. It was also less than $10, so.
And that's what counts most. That's what counts in the end.
Hannah, what have been some of your favorite books?
I really like reading a lot of 20th century American fiction. Some of my favorite books have been A Separate Peace by John Knowles, if you've ever read that.
No, I've never even heard of that.
Big fan. It's about two boys at a private boarding school in New England in the early years of World War II. It's a good read.
Is it some gay stuff too?
Okay, so here's the thing. A lot of theorists on the book, English academics who have read it, have said they're definitely gay for one another, and then there's all of this language being like, no, they're not, but there's an entire scene where they tussle around in the field and they're wrestling, and Jean has way too many details about it for it to not be.
There's some homoeroticism in there.
Yes, that's a great one. Oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on every book I've ever read. I really love The Time Traveler's Wife. I read that. Do you not like The Time Traveler's Wife?
It's so random. I would not have picked that for you.
Yeah. No, I really loved that. I'm literally trying to think of books that I've read. I mean, The Great Gatsby is probably one that I've read on multiple occasions, simply because I really like to read it again and pick a different person's point of view to feel sorry for, because I think you should feel sorry for everyone in the book.
Okay.
Yeah, those are my thoughts.
I've read the entire saga.
Mm-hmm.
You have too?
Yes.
Okay. We grew up with this.
Yes.
I personally think Midnight Sun is the best book out of the series.
Okay, I thought that as well.
Okay.
And I was wondering while I was reading it, has it just been too long since I've fully read the Twilights? Actually sat down with a hardcover copy, read it cover to cover. But I think that the years between the books has allowed Stephenie Meyers to mature a little bit, perhaps, as an author. I haven't done too much research into if she's written other books.
She has the Host series. That was
her?
show. Yeah.
I didn't know that was her.
Yeah.
I thought this as well actually moved the plot along further, or gave more information that was needed.
Okay, so out of 5 stars, what would you give Midnight Sun? You can do half stars too.
Well, see, okay, so I was thinking about this on the way over, because
Okay.
I thought you might ask.
Okay.
And what I will say is, I think that if you are someone like us who is a fan of Twilight, is reading Midnight Sun because you want new Twilight material, it honestly is the only reason you should read Midnight Sun, is if you're already a Twilight fan. I would even give it a 4.5 out of 5, really, really meeting the fans' expectations, giving them what they really did want for years. As far as a book writing goes, 3 out of 5.
Whoa, really? That's kind of harsh.
I mean, it is. I'm sorry, Stephenie Meyer. I do love your work.
I'm just thinking about this though. If you had never read Twilight and just read this book, you'd be like,
you wouldn't understand any of it.
Yeah.
So much of the way it was written was solely for the fans' expectations of things.
Yes.
There were entire areas of context that would have been needed that were just passed over. Like, Alice has visions. No need to explain anything else to that.
There's literally no world building.
No.
Yeah. So on Goodreads, which is the social media site that I use to rate books and write reviews for books on, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. And I'm going to stick with 4 out of 5 stars. And I do rate my books as a reviewer, not as like, I'm obsessed with this and like, I'm just going to give every book in the series 5 stars. Like, I truly critically think about why I'm giving this a rating the way that I'm giving it. So for me, I wanted to give this book 5 stars. Like, I wanted this to be the Team Edward trashy romance book that I needed in my life.
Can we also both just quickly establish Team Edward?
Oh, 100%.
Team Edward.
Yeah.
No one watching this video should make any assumption otherwise.
No, fully Team Edward, Team Robert Pattinson, all of the above. Like, that's where we're at in our minds. So I was expecting like really emo, vampy, dark, twisted thoughts, which we got.
Yeah.
We got that.
The brooding was in full effect.
Oh my god, yes. The brooding was so good. Okay, there's a moment, and I tabbed this in the book, where he does contemplate killing an entire classroom just to get a taste of Bella's blood. And my reaction was, that's hot.
Yeah.
Like, whenever I hear about like a school shooting, I'm like, that's so sad. We need to ban guns.
For a second I thought you were gonna say that's so hot, and I was gonna run.
No.
Oh my god.
No, whenever I hear about a school shooting, I'm always like, we need more gun control, like, America is failing us. But like in the city of Forks, if a man rips open a bunch of people's jugulars to be with the woman he loves.
In a biology class.
In a biology class, I don't know, it gets to me. That's romance.
Yeah. Well, I think again, it's knowing what they're going to become eventually.
Yeah.
Knowing how much his blood really does mean to her. Again, anyone else reading this just to read it as the first book or an introduction would be very, very confused by that.
Yeah. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because I thought the pacing was really off in this book. Like, okay, Stephanie Meyer has said that it took her 12 years to write this, and it read like it took her 12 years to write it. Because there were moments in it where I was like, you wrote this in like a spur of writing inspiration in like 2013, but there's other points where I'm like, this is so rushed, like you wrote this at a different time in your life. Like, you can see the differences in her writing style throughout the book, because when you're a writer and you're writing something for a long time, I feel like in 10 years you grow so much as a person that it's inevitable that your writing style changes. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there wasn't a lot of cohesion in the book, and that should have been rectified by an editor. So my biggest complaint is the editing in this book. My other issues with this book was the Mormonism.
Let's just dive right in.
Because, and this is something that I talk to everyone about. I'm like, love Midnight Sun, so great. Let's talk about the theological implications.
We talked about this 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah, but it's all I want to talk about.
I know.
I literally feel like I could give a TED Talk about Mormonism and Twilight at this point. So, we go to a Catholic university in Chicago. We go to the best Catholic university in Chicago.
The Jesuit institution of Chicago.
Yeah, well, DePaul sucks, so just gotta put that out there. So we are actually required to take theology courses throughout our time. We don't have to take like Catholic theology, but like we do have to take theology classes. So I feel like having had those theology courses before, I feel like I can read more into religion in literature. Like, I don't know why, but I feel like that's a skill that I've developed since taking those classes. And so I'm more aware of it when I'm reading stuff like Midnight Sun. And I know that you can separate the author from their religion, but in this case, I feel like you truly cannot.
No, I feel like you can't, because what she's doing is she's implementing in a value system. For those of you, again, who have read the Twilight Saga, understand there's a very specific reason why Edward loves Bella, and so much of it has to do with the fact that she doesn't know that she's beautiful, she's simplistic, she doesn't want to be the pretty girl. Jessica, her friend is her exact foil to her in all of the ways that Jessica is arrogant, Bella is selfless, and so much of that comes into play in how Stephenie Meyers views what ultimately is beauty or what is meant to be holy in this way.
I agree. That's one aspect of it. Because, and obviously everyone's first reaction to the Twilight Saga and Mormonism is no premarital sex. That's like the first thing they latch onto. But premarital sex is not a unique thing to Mormonism. That's something that is found in many different religions.
Yeah.
Like, being abstinent until marriage is not like an uncommon expectation for many religious people.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think you can fully put that on Stephenie Meyer as like a Mormon, because
she also explains in a lot of ways that Edward's character as someone from the early 20th century, that would have just been like a national social standard.
It's like your mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But rooted in her as a Mormon author.
Yeah, I mean, I also read an article about her not wanting to put an explicit sex scene in Breaking Dawn. So in Breaking Dawn, it's implied that they have sex, but it's not described. So anyways, I want to talk more about Carlisle and Mormonism. Carlisle, chapter 20, page 448. So this is the chapter that I was like, Carlisle is the founder of Mormonism. True.
Chapter 20, Carlisle.
I don't even think I tabbed anything in here, but when I read this, so Carlisle is the father to Edward, the adoptive father. So he is the man who has turned every single person in the Cullen family into a vampire.
Aside from Alice and Jasper.
Yes, they were adopted. Truly. So, yeah, out of the, I don't know, 6 or 7 people that were turned into vampires, he turned 2/3 of them. Okay, so Carlisle was born in the English countryside, we found out, and he lived with his father, who was a vicar, which is an English Anglican position that still exists to this day, part of the clergy. So Carlisle executed a bunch of witch hunts, vampire hunts, werewolf hunts. Like, he was the guy who was like, I'm going to eradicate supernatural beings from this planet. And Carlisle grew up with that sentiment. He grew up in a very religious Anglican family with a lot of hatred inside. And Carlisle also went on these vampire hunts along with his father, we find out, in like, what was this, the 1400s, 1500s?
It says London in the 1650s, I explained.
Oh,
so
Henry VIII era.
Yeah.
So he's going through England during a very interesting political time for England, which she doesn't go into, but she could have. And so Carlisle comes upon a den of vampires in the sewers of London or whatever, and he is turned into the thing that his father hunts.
The thing he has been taught to hate.
Yes. So Carlisle becomes the being who is supposedly evil, who his father views as devil incarnate. And when he becomes a vampire, he automatically has this self-loathing. He tries to kill himself.
He tries to starve himself.
He tries to starve himself. He refuses to drink human blood. In the 600, or how long? 1650, how long ago was that? That's 500 years ago.
He's in London in the 1650s, yeah.
400 years ago, ish. He has not drinking human blood, ever. He feeds on like rats and like animals because he refuses to take a human life. And eventually he gets tired of being alone in this English area, whatever. So he swims across the channel to Italy. Well, he gets to France, swims across the channel, walks through France, goes to Italy, and meets the Volturi. And he stays with the Volturi for a couple hundred years, maybe 100 years.
I think about like 100 years or so he's with them. But to understand, the Volturi have been around for the dawn of time, essentially. They're so old that no one knows how old they are.
Yeah.
And they are the establishment.
Right. And so he's in Italy with the Volturi. And in my mind, the Volturi represents the Vatican. They both start with a V. They both are in Italy. So I think there's some connection there.
Well, I think even in New Moon, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Volturi, their underground castle as it is like beneath the church in the town of Voltaire, or it's like I'm going off of my imagery from the New Moon movie, but when you go in, it very much does resemble like a Catholic basilica.
Yeah, they go to the catacombs and stuff. So the Volturi, in my mind, represents the Vatican. And they live this way of life. They have this rule over all species of vampires. And Carlisle wants to be a part of them. Like, he wants human interaction, but he cannot, for the life of him, drink human blood.
No.
That's his biggest qualm with the Volturi, is that they do suck the life out of everyone. And he's like, no, I can't live that way. I can't acclimate to this life, and I want to go out on my own, and I want to create my own family, because vampires are allowed to create their own covens. Like, that's something we read all about in Breaking Dawn, because there's all these covens from all different around the world. So he leaves the Volturi, so he leaves the Vatican, he leaves the Catholic Church, which is what happened with the founder of Mormonism, who believed that the Catholic Church was being abusive. So he left. So Mormons landed in Kansas City.
Shout out to Annie, our friend, Kansas City.
Who can tell you more about Mormonism than I can, but because she's obsessed with Kansas City history. So the Mormons thought Kansas City was the promised land. Like, I think they thought like Kansas as a whole was like their promised land. But the people of Kansas were like, no, you guys are whack. Like, get your weird ass polygamy out of here. Like, you're not welcome here. There was a bunch of massacres of like Mormon people. Like, yeah, like they were hanged and stuff. Yeah.
Maybe I should talk to Annie about this.
Yeah, or like they were like persecuted and they were jailed and it was a bunch of things. So then the leader of Mormonism was like, all right guys, Kansas City is not the promised land. So then they went west during the 1850s when westward expansion was becoming a thing in like the Oregon Trail and everything. So they went west and they're like, Utah. Salt Lake City is the promised land. And that is why so many Mormons live in Utah, is because they were exiled from Kansas and settled in Utah and created this whole space for Mormons to thrive. So Carlisle leaves Italy, goes west to America, settles somewhere dark like Forks, Washington.
Forks, Washington, which is a real place that you can visit.
And decides that that's where he's going to create his family. But he's traveling around America before then, trying to find... Wait, I don't think he's trying to find people to be a part of his coven, but I think he's...
so also
aware of that.
Yeah, I think he knows that that's where he's headed.
Yeah.
The other thing too is part of Carlisle's inner struggle, and we see it reflected in Edward in a lot of ways, is this idea of, I'm lonely, I want people to come into my life, I still want that interaction, but at the same time, this idea of damning someone to the same life that you're living. They're very much under the impression that it is a form of damnation in and of itself. And so Carlisle becomes a doctor in this attempt to give life instead of taking life, saving people's lives. And at the point at which he does turn Edward, it's because Edward's on his deathbed, and that becomes Carlisle's philosophy.
Which, finding out that Edward Cullen is from Chicago...
Just gonna say it. But real question, do you think Edward is a north side Chicagoan or a south side Chicagoan?
I feel like he's from Skokie, but he says he's from Chicago.
He's from Wilmette. Yeah, also it's funny, should mention that this is the year that Stephenie Meyer released Midnight Sun because Edward died during the Spanish influenza in Chicago.
It's 2020.
Like.
Well, I'm out. I'm gonna do a refill.
Yeah, I'm gonna need some more wine in a minute. Carnivore.
This is not sponsored, but if you're a wine distributor who would like to sponsor our next video, just send me a little comment or whatever. I will take free wine.
Morgan, what are your thoughts on the wine thus far?
I like it.
Yeah, I do too.
I think it's decent.
Yeah. Back to Carlisle, London, the 1650s.
Yeah, he's basically the leader. He's the patriarch of the Cullen Coven, of the Washington Coven. He sets out to create Edward. He doesn't seek to take life, but because Edward was dying from Spanish influenza, he's like, all right, I'll turn him into a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess Edward's mom knew that Carlisle was a vampire.
His mother, Elizabeth, the way Carlisle describes it is that, like, she knew something, and while she was dying right before Edward was about to, she basically told him, you have to save him, and in sort of like a very knowing way. And so, yeah, he literally waited until Edward was on his deathbed and then said, let's get biting.
Let's get biting.
Let's get biting.
So, Edward is the first person Carlisle changes, and that is his son.
Mm-hmm.
And then he meets Esme, which they don't talk about in Midnight Sun, but in Breaking Dawn they go more into detail. But Esme tried to kill herself by jumping off a cliff because her baby died.
Did she have a miscarriage?
I thought she had a stillborn.
Oh, yeah.
And she had a stillborn. So she throws herself off a cliff. She's hanging on to life, but then Carlisle's like, she's gonna be my mate. So I'm gonna turn her.
What's that TikTok that's like, Lil Shawty the baddest?
I'm too old for TikTok. Okay. Then he turns Esme his mate. Because I guess vampires mate for life, much like penguins. Don't they mate for life?
Well, I don't know if penguins mate for life. I wouldn't know that.
Dolphins do.
Okay. I think, is it lobsters?
Yes.
Lobsters mate for life. Yeah, I mean, part of what they describe in the Twilight Saga is that because vampires are so unchanging for periods of time, when they do experience really strong emotions like love, that's love. Like, that's it. And you're gonna feel that for a very long time. Yeah,
which is why everyone is coupled up. But I think it's interesting too because, not speaking for a bunch of Mormons right now, but it is not uncommon for Mormons to get married straight out of college or while in college. All these couples, Alice, Jasper, Emmett, Rosalie, and now Edward, when he finds Bella, is like, this is it. This is my one true mate, and her blood smells so good. I'm ready to go on her, like, let me do this.
But don't let me do this, but let me do this.
So, I mean, I could go on and on and on about Mormonism, but I feel like this is the least interesting part about Midnight Sun.
No, the least interesting part of Midnight Sun was that car chase scene. That was the...
Oh my god, yes.
Okay,
we talked about that.
Again,
Page, like, 600.
Again,
because the whole James thing didn't happen until, like, the very last minute.
Whoever was the editor, please, how did you read this part and be like, this is what the fans want. It's not what we wanted. What we wanted from Midnight Sun was the dinner table conversation at the Cullen's house. We did not need the car chase scene. We did not.
I was like, is O.J. Simpson here?
Should I give some context while you find it?
Yeah, I'm trying to find this bullshit.
So the context of the scene, again, you've read Twilight, we're assuming, you understand. Towards the end of the first book, James, a tracker, decides that he's going to hunt and kill Bella. He tricks her into thinking that he's kidnapped her mother and lures her into her old ballet studio with the intention of killing her. And at the point at which Edward finds this out, he and the rest of his family are on this car chase, race against the clock to get to the ballet studio. And Stephenie Meyer really, really took her time explaining every minute detail of this scene when nobody cared.
Okay, from page 554 to page 602, I have absolutely no tabs because I have no comment on the...
That was how... No, that cannot be how long the
No, it was 50 pages. Ridiculous. It was 50 pages until she got into the hospital. Because
even the ballet studio scene I felt was weak, but we'll get into that.
yeah,
we'll get
I
into
mean,
that.
like, okay. She described the cars with their make, model, and year. Do I look like I read Auto Trader?
If you are one of those girls reading Twilight, you are not. I mean, everyone do your own thing. But none of these words meant anything to me. She
was like a BMW motorcycle, and I was like,
she was like, there's a Bronco, and I was like, who cares?
O.J. Simpson drove a Bronco. Like, that's what it was. It was a white Bronco.
Was it?
Yeah, and that's why I thought it was so funny. Because
that's why how little I care about these cars. And I get that Edward cares about. So to understand, many members of the Cullen family have a hobby and a pastime of interesting cars. But do you really think that what Edward cared about the most while he was chasing a race against the clock to save his mate from a tracker trying to murder her in a ballet studio, that he was like, oh yes, a minivan.
Yeah, this is more
minivan.
And the fact that Carlisle just had a sedative ready to knock out whoever was in the car, I was like, you brought that on the plane? Like, to Arizona?
I mean, maybe with like a medical license he can.
Do you really think a medical license can allow you to bring a sedative like that on a plane?
Comment below if you know.
I only have a bachelor's, I don't have a medical degree. But I want to talk about something that I did like about this book. So I actually reread Twilight in October of 2019.
Okay.
Because I was like, it's Halloween time.
It's time to get spooky.
I want to get my vampire stuff on. So I really liked rereading Twilight. It was really fast paced. It gave me everything I wanted out of it. I was like, yeah, like, this is awesome. It's the YA novel I grew up with. And the writing was so quick paced. I think I read it in a day. Like, it was so, like, fast. Like, it was just done. This book is not fast paced. But when I was rereading Twilight, I was like, I don't get it. I don't get the relationship between Bella and Edward. I don't understand his attraction to her. And I didn't fully understand her attraction to him, because it was like,
interesting.
Do you like him because he's a vampire, or are you genuinely interested in him as a intellectual being? Like, do you like feel like you have a common similarity with him? Like, what is the deal? Reading Midnight Sun, it was like a light bulb just went off. It was like, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get why Edward loves Bella. Did you know?
I mean, no, I definitely get that as well. At the point at which I knew earlier this summer that Midnight Sun was being released, I found all of the PDFs online and read through, not the entire saga again, but went to like my favorite chapters and reread those. Yeah, the angel from the original Twilight.
The angel.
That's the name of the chapter. Like when he saves her.
Oh, in Port Angeles.
No, not from Port Angeles. Like in the ballet studio.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I like reread my favorite chapters. But I also have always taken it to be a criticism of Twilight, as it were. I'm sure it's like one that a lot of people make fun of, is that so much of their relationship is just about him being a vampire and everything about him is just beautiful. He's a marble statue, as she often describes him. No, I felt this similar as well. I mean, to be fair, a lot of that comes from he spends a lot of time watching her and reading the thoughts of those around her. But I get it now. I also understanding him more, and you understand who she is as a person.
What you get in Midnight Sun are more in-depth conversations that Bella and Edward have in the meadow, which lasted like 200 pages.
Oh my god, talk about pacing. Talk about pacing. Stephanie Meyer was like, we're here, and we're gonna stay here for a while. But also understanding that much of that mental dialogue was him being like, am I gonna kill her today? Remains to be seen.
It's interesting the way that Bella is described in relation to her mother, Renee.
Okay, yeah.
And I feel like in Midnight Sun, it's more explained that Bella is the caretaker of her family. Like, she's had to grow up. Like, Renee has been this sprite young woman who doesn't want to settle down ever. And Bella is the person who's always like, all right, Mom, time to get real. Like, we got an electric bill due on the 31st. Like,
yeah, loves her daughter, but isn't interested in the traditional ideas of being a parent.
Yeah, she's not very motherly.
Yeah.
She's like, I had a kid, so she's gonna be my best friend, not I had a kid, I'm gonna be her mom.
Yeah.
So
very Gilmore Girls-esque in a lot of ways.
I never saw Gilmore Girls.
If you watch Gilmore Girls,
yeah,
you get it.
So I feel like their dynamic is more explored in this book, and you kind of get that, like, Bella has had to be the older person throughout her life, and I think that's the same thing with Charlie too. Like, I do think that Charlie is dependent on Bella because
she cooks all his meals for him.
She cooks all his meals for him. She, like, asks him, like, when he's gonna be done from work. Like, she's always conscious that Charlie needs to be taken care of. She's been parenting her own parents, so I think that gives her a level of maturity that makes her responsible enough to date someone who is 117 years old.
Yeah.
So that made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
In a way.
No, I get that as well. Yeah, I also felt that because reading Twilight from Bella's perspective, it's mentioned in a lot of ways that she spends a lot of time taking care of her parents, but because it is such from her first person perspective point of view, she's not gonna, like, she doesn't do a lot of, like, wallowing in it. She doesn't feel sorry for herself that she has to take care of her parents, versus Edward spends more time contemplating it. I think there's a point early in the book where, because he can't read her mind, he's trying to figure out who she is, and then finally he realizes that the thing, it's sort of like a line in the book, something to the effect of, the thing that she is the most, or that defines her, is that she is selfless.
Yeah.
And Edward spends much of the book grappling with his own selfishness, or wishing that he didn't have to be selfish with her. And she is this embodiment of selflessness. Yeah. Which also isn't something that I took away from reading it from her perspective.
Yeah.
So seeing the way he views her lends a lot of understanding to their relationship.
Yeah, I think there's a level of maturity that shows through in Bella in this book that's not really seen in the other books. And quite frankly, I don't think that Kristen Stewart was the right actress to portray Bella.
Okay, hot take.
You think that's a hot take?
I think it's a hot take because everything that I've heard in, like, the consciousness of, like, movie Twilight is Kristen Stewart is the perfect representation of Bella.
Oh, I completely disagree. When I read Twilight, I view a different person.
Really?
Like,
I definitely, okay, I say I viewed someone very different reading Midnight Sun. But
even when I reread Twilight, I viewed someone different.
Really?
Yeah, I do not picture Kristen Stewart as Bella.
What would you have wanted to have seen changed?
So,
do you think physically she represents Bella? Like, what she looks like in your mind?
no, because here's what I view Bella as. She is this, maybe, like, height and body type, sure. Kristen Stewart fits the bill. I mean, it's not completely off, but for me, I think, like, Bella is a very warm person. I think she's someone who cares so much about Edward. She loves him so much. Like, she has this undying love. Like, she wants to be a vampire. Like, she wants to be with him to no end. Like, she will sacrifice her life for him.
Yeah.
When I see Kristen Stewart on camera, and this is in any movie that I see her in, I don't view her as this warm, caring person. I view her as, like, I'm a badass bitch who, like, wants to fuck a vampire.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
like,
I could see that.
And she's been in other roles where she's, like, this very feminist powerhouse. And I think Bella is more of, like, I read a lot of Jane Eyre, and I wear leggings and maybe a sweatshirt, and, like, I put my hair in a little top knot, and I'm super cozy and cute, which is not a vibe that I get from Kristen Stewart.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also difficult because, as with any book to movie translation, you have to figure out what's going to appeal to audiences, and they definitely, I always think about, especially when I go back and reread the Twilight book, just how much Stephenie Meyers captures their youth in the books versus in the movie. There's definitely a greater level of, like, I'll say hypersexualization, or wanting it to be, like, very do you know what I'm saying? like they almost like age up. It's like on any like teen drama series where they have like 25-year-olds portraying 17-year-olds. Riverdale, Gossip Girl. The list goes on and on. But I definitely always find that in the books, the way that they are portrayed as being truly 17 and what it means to be 17.
I do think the casting for Edward was spot on. I mean, I love Robert Pattinson.
2021 is the Robert Pattinson Renaissance.
No, not even.
It is! Batman?
Okay, yes. But, like, I've been on that train for, like, years. If you go on my Twitter, which I do have linked in the description box down below, 95% of my tweets are about Robert Pattinson.
And most of my tweets are responses to your tweets about Robert Pattinson.
So I want to talk about the cover. It's a pomegranate.
Mm-hmm.
How many references are there in this book about Persephone?
Every other page. Edward is like, have you met Persephone? Can I mention
Hades?
Persephone? He's like every kid who read Percy Jackson in the 8th grade and is ready to go like off in his freshman year English class. He's like, I actually understand Greek mythology. Persephone, Hades, springtime, winter.
She ate those 6 pomegranate seeds. Ruined her.
He really just went for that.
He was like, I'm Hades, Bella is Persephone.
I mean, it is a good metaphor or good comparison.
I just don't feel
Stephanie Myers, every other page you really needed to remind us.
I think I counted. Like, I think there's at least 5 references to Persephone in this book.
No, it's true. Truly my favorite chapter in the entire book, and we were talking about this earlier, Morgan and I tonight, is the dinner table scene with the Cullens, which is the point at which Alice, who has visions, reveals to the group that Edward is either going to fall in love with Bella and be with her forever and she will be a vampire, or he's going to kill her. And I actually think I give Stephanie Meyer credit. In that scene, she really brought us home to how much pain he was truly in. Because there's a point where he screams, "No!" and then jumps up from the table.
And like climbs a tree or something.
He says, "You better hang on tight, spider monkey." Yeah. So to understand, I finished the book about 5 minutes before I had to head into a work meeting. Like, I was meeting up with people from my job to talk about like serious work stuff, and all that was in my head for at least the first 10 minutes of that meeting was, Edward's leaving Bella. Edward's leaving Bella. And I know this because I've read New Moon, but hearing it from his perspective, knowing it was going to happen, something in my poor, tender, like 12-year-old heart just snapped in half.
Well, it was funny because, so Hannah came over to my apartment like a week before she finished it, or 2 weeks before she finished it. I don't know when, whatever. And she was like, I'm reading this and I just don't really understand why New Moon happened. And I'm like, wait for it.
Wait for
and he's
it.
Like, she was like, I don't understand why he leaves her. Like, after all the internal agony and all the
fact that he overcomes so much of his agony in the first book. He really does go through this transformation as a person.
And then I'm like, wait for it. Because in the end, he's like, I put her through so much. Mm-hmm. He was like, she almost died because of me. And I love her so much that I should not be with her. Yeah. And that's the internal struggle he has in the end.
Mm-hmm. Because in New Moon, from Bella's perspective, there's this idea that this thing happened early on in New Moon at her birthday that triggers Edward's response to leave. But understanding now that he was planning it the entire time, or that he knew that he had to.
Can I just throw the rest in here?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
We can open up another bottle too.
We have two. Oh my gosh, yeah. It was heartbreaking to read, knowing what was coming, because even then, prom happens in, like late April, early May, and they didn't break up until her birthday, which is in September.
Yeah.
And I know because I Googled it. I Googled, when is Bella's birthday? And they said September, I want to say it's September like 13th or
okay,
something.
but, so the whole event that triggers Edward leaving is Jasper's bloodlust. Mm-hmm. But in this book, I have such an appreciation for Jasper now.
Oh my gosh, yes.
His interaction with James.
The level of work that he puts in to protect them.
Bella and everyone. I was like, this is insane.
Or even Emmett's newfound protection for Bella.
Yes.
Yes. Because also, just to be honest, I'm such an Emmett.
Oh, me
I'm
too.
such an Emmett girl. I also think it's probably because in a lot of ways I am a Rosalie to begin with. But
oh, you totally
I am
are.
a Rosalie.
You are totally Rosalie.
100% I am a Rosalie.
Even though she looks like Victoria.
My curls came out perfectly tonight, which I'm very happy about to capture Victoria.
Well, I was literally like, before we started, I'm like, you're looking like Victoria today.
And I said, thank you. No, yeah, truly an Emmett girl. Anyways, Jasper.
There's such an appreciation that I have for Jasper now that I didn't have when I was like 13.
Mm-hmm. Because Jasper's very much, in the original saga, he very much just is a background character.
Yeah.
He has like a little stint in Eclipse where he's like, I know how to kill a newborn, and then we just tuck him back into the corner forever.
I honestly feel like in real life, if this coven existed, I feel like Jasper would be my ideal man.
Yeah.
The southern gentleman.
Because Emmett is sweet and he's kind and he's caring, but he's so stupid.
He's so dumb.
The fact that he laughs at the dinner table when Alice is like, by the way, Edward's in love with a human, and he just loses his shit because he thinks it's funny.
I also love Emmett's interaction with Edward. And they're in like a Spanish class.
Okay, yeah. Underrated parts of the book, things we truly did want from Stephenie Meyer in this new edition, is all of those interactions between Edward and his siblings, specifically the Edward-Emmett relationship, understanding how deep that runs.
They're like best friends.
Yeah, how much they joke around
So
with one
weird.
another, and just, yeah, they truly do goof off together.
They're like genuinely brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing that killed me about his interactions with his siblings that I will not get over is his relationship with Rosalie that was developed in this book. Because I loved Rosalie throughout the saga.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, she's a survivor. Like, she's been through so much. Like, she was gang raped. Like, that's what happened to her.
That's how Carlisle found her and how she got turned, was she was dying.
Like, she was dying from these wounds from these men who hurt her so bad. And, like, you understand the trauma that she had through that situation. And then in Midnight Sun, Stephenie Meyer turns around and is like, well, Rosalie is obsessed with her looks. And I'm like, there's so much more depth to Rosalie that you're not getting to. And you're just passing it off as narcissism.
Yep.
And that bothered me so much. Because I was like, Rosalie is so much more than that. And, like, you did not do her a great service by creating a Barbie version of a vampire with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, very much this idea that Rosalie only is upset with Edward because he wasn't in love with her the way everyone else was.
Yeah.
When in reality, what it really comes down to is this idea that Rosalie would trade it all to be human again. If anything, she acts as this reminder for Edward that he can't do this thing to Bella.
Yeah.
And I think that is really important. And I wish he would have I wish that from his perspective, he would have taken her more seriously instead of just being like, well, Rosalie's mad again.
She's vain.
I think what I didn't like is that he painted her as being this very pissy girl.
Yeah.
The whole scene where she almost like runs him over with her car.
Yeah.
And she's like, I won't. And I'm like, that's not a fair portrayal of her when what she's really upset about is you're going to wreck this girl's life. Knowing the way that she became a vampire, saying you're gonna do this to another innocent young person.
Because she took vampirism in a very difficult way. Like, she saw the value in human life, and she didn't want that for someone else.
She was happy with her life.
She was so content. And then Edward's like, well, I'm in love with a human, and I'm probably going to turn her into a vampire. Even though he constantly says he's not going to.
But like, Alice is like, the one thing that I will give credit is Rosalie said very explicitly to him, what are you going to do when she begs? Like, you won't say no to her.
Yeah.
Knowing Edward well enough to know where he's headed.
Yeah.
And being upset with him justifiably for that.
Yeah. Hi everyone, we're super drunk and we have come to a conclusion about Midnight Sun. Ultimately, it's the best book ever.
Yeah.
Even though I only gave it 4 out of 5 stars.
Yeah.
Is it the best book I've read all year?
No.
No. That goes to Outlander by Dan and Gaffelton, written in 1994. But Midnight Sun was the book I needed as a Team Edward stan.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. 100%. What I will say about Midnight Sun, I will never say that Midnight Sun is the most incredible piece of literature ever written.
No.
Will I revisit Midnight Sun for years to come?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you are someone who loved Twilight, if you are someone who really felt it deeply in your bones, really connected with the material, you will love Midnight Sun for everything that it is.
Yeah. With its flaws and all.
Yeah.
It's a good book.
See what Twilight can do for the fans. Stephanie Meyer, this one's for you.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more from me, please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Alright, bye!
Bye!